Want to make this? Of course you do. Follow along and we'll show you how. Okay, so this is everything you're going to receive in your first month's package. You'll receive a package of needles. These are jeans needles. They have a little heavier shaft to them, so they're going to put a bigger hole in your paper, which will make it easier for you to tear out. You'll have a book. You'll have 2 packages of fabric, 2 groups, and then you're going to have your patterns. So the patterns that we're making for month 1 are the blue whale, and this is all on the 1 page. That's all there is to the blue whale. And you're making 2 of those. So you have 2 of that. And then you're going to have the Brolga pattern. Now the Brolga pattern is the more complex one. We're going to start over here, don't worry. So you have 2 of these, and that goes with these pieces right here. So the paper piecing things that you're going to be sewing through are the ones with the lines through the middle of the paper. These other ones that don't have any lines, all of these, those are templates. So the first thing you're going to do is cut out your patterns. You're going to cut them out right on the line, all of them. And then we will come back when I've got that all done. We're going to start with this one, and I'll show you what the next step is. Okay, so to prepare the pieces, I cut them apart. And the template pieces I traced onto freezer paper, just the stuff that you get at the grocery store. And then I cut those freezer paper pieces out right on the line and labeled them. This one's H, this one's O. Okay, we're going to put those aside. The next thing you'll want to do is cut out this one right on the line, and then take your add a quarter ruler. If you have the add a quarter plus, it's very helpful. This is a nice kind of sharp edge. And you will want to pre-fold all of their pieces along all of these lines. So you just line your ruler up and give it a nice sharp crease. And crease a little bit beyond where your line goes. And the next line. And we're going to do that all the way down on all of the lines. And that will help you when it comes time to trim. Okay, we've got all of our folds in. And the next thing we're going to do is choose what fabric to go where. Now I've chosen my dark blue here, this big square piece. That's going to be the big outer curve and the smaller inner curve. Now you'll receive a couple big pieces like this for this block, but you're going to be making 2 blocks. So this is the other one that I made, and I chose to do it exactly the way they have it in the book, where you have the same fabric here and here. So if you wanted to put the dark blue in here and the light blue out here, you're the queen of your quilt. You can do it the way you want. But I did it like they did in the book so we could show you how. Alrighty, so it tells us here that the black and red print, which are the geese right here, that you need to cut 4 squares 3 3/4 inches, and then we're going to cut across the diagonal to give us 7 pieces. So the multicolored print is the big piece is out here, the 11 by 11, and the black and red print is the 3 3/4 by 15-inch piece. So that's what this one is. This piece for me is going to be the outer part where it's got this light pink right here. I'm hoping you can see that I'm in the frame. So this light pink right here is the outer part. They're calling it the purple print. And that one should be 3 3/4 by 24 1/2, which mine is. So the next thing I'm going to do, let's put this one aside, and we're going to cut this piece into, it tells us 4 squares, 3 3/4, and then cut them diagonally across. Okay, so I've got all my squares cut, and then I'm gonna I've got them stacked up. Okay, so those are all the inside geese pieces. This is what I'm gonna use for my wings, and it tells us to cut 7 squares, 3.5 by 3.5, and then 1 cut across diagonally. So I'll do that now. Okay, so we've got all these cut. I've stacked them up, and I'm going to cut them 1 time diagonally. And then we are ready to head over to the sewing station. This is all we need, are these 2 pieces and our paper. So see you there. Okay, this is our sample all finished up. So this is what we're going to be making. And the first thing we're going to do is find our number 1 spot, and that is going to be blue. We've got our wings and our geese. So we're going to flip the paper over, and we need to make sure that our triangle covers where we folded on the paper. That's one of the reasons we folded the paper, so we could see on this side where the lines are. So just need to make sure that you're over top of the lines and the right side of your fabric is facing up. Okay, our piece number 2 is over here. So we're going to take a wing piece and put it right here. And we want to make sure that this fabric covers this triangle, and the way to do that is to fold it back on the fold that we put in the paper and make sure we've got fabric all the way around plus 1/4 inch, and look over up under here too to make sure you've got that. So especially on this first piece, I want to pin this in place because when I flip it over to sew on it, I don't want anything getting out away from where it's supposed to be.
Have you ever used glue?
I have used glue, and I guess the glue that I was using was so good that when I went to pull the pieces apart, it stretched my fabric and distorted it. So I'm not a fan of the glue. You can if you want to, if you've got a glue that's a little less adhesive than mine. So I've got it pinned in place. My pin is well out of the way of where I'm going to stitch. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to sew on this line between piece 1 and piece 2. I'm going to start off the edge of my paper by at least 1/4 inch, and I'm going to stitch beyond this line by at least 1/4 inch. In here on the interior, I'm going to back stitch a couple of stitches. You'll see why as soon as I'm finished. So on your machine setup, you're going to want to put your 90 jeans needle in your machine. And you're also going to want to put your stitch length down to about a 1.5. That's going to poke lots of big holes in your paper and make it very much easier to pull your paper off when you're finished. So I'm not going real fast, I'm going fairly slow. I'm stitching beyond and back stitching. I wish I had my TL 2010 with my good thread cutter. This commercial machine doesn't have one of those. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is where I went beyond here, I'm going to release that paper. That's why we back stitched, so we didn't pull our stitches out. And now it's time to trim. So we're going to fold everything back along the line that we just stitched and trim 1/4 inch. I've just got a very small smidgen. If you have more than that, that's fine. Okay, and now we're going to stitch the line between 1 and 3. So we're going to fold this back, and we're going to give ourselves that 1/4 inch seam allowance to line up our next wing. So our next wing is going to go right here. We're going to fold this back to make sure we've got the proper coverage. I've got more than 1/4 inch beyond here and here in my point and out here. So I'm going to secure that with a pin that's fairly far away from where I'm going to be stitching. And it doesn't matter if you start in here or out here, just so long as when you're on the interior of the paper, you give a back stitch so it doesn't pull out when you're pulling your paper apart. Stitch off the edge. The next piece we're going to put on is this number 4 piece, and that's a blue piece. So we're going to release that paper so that we can actually make that fold, okay? We're going to pull this over. Okay, so now we need to press this piece that we just sewed on back. And we are going to put on piece number 3, which is going to go right here. It's a wing piece. And again, I'm going to pin in place. If you have a glue you like, feel free. All right. Again, we're going to start beyond and sew beyond. And on the interior portion here, I am going to back stitch so that it doesn't pull my stitches out when I pull the paper. Take my pin out. Rip that paper back. Fold this back. And it's a very good idea to make sure that you're pushing that all the way out. Otherwise, that's really the only way in paper piecing that you will lose a point, is if you don't push this all the way out. So now we're going to do piece number 4. So we're going to fold back. Put our add 1/4 ruler on here and cut off all this excess. Just like that. And we will put our next blue piece right like that. I'm going to check again to make sure that when I fold that back that this is enough to cover with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and it is. Pin that in place, flip over, and sew on the line a 1/4 inch outside. Now this particular seam does not have anything on the interior where we're ripping the paper, so I don't have to back stitch here. Just make sure I'm starting a 1/4 inch outside. And press. See how perfect that makes your points? Okay, and then look for piece number 5, which is this one over here. Oopsie. fold that back and cut all this excess off. And this is where we're going to line up our next wing piece. Double check. This pattern really gives you a generous amount of fabric. I haven't had any difficulty at all with the amounts of fabric that I've got. Okay, and again, I'm on the interior, so I'm going to back stitch. Press that out. And fold this down. We're working from piece number 6 right here. So I need to release that paper so I can fold it down. Right sides together. I have to remind myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you'll know if you run into difficulty anywhere or you have a question, you can call me with a question. If you're having a hard time with any of this, stop by the shop. We'll help you. You'll probably notice that I am not trimming all these excess threads, partly because I don't have my good machine here, but that's going to get cut off. It's not going to wind up in my piece. So it's flipped up that way. Let me release my paper. When I put this down, I'm going to end up cutting off a lot of those little threads, so I don't fuss over that too terribly much. Okay, we're ready for another blue piece. Double check to make sure. If you're using a different fabric here than I am, just make sure your right side's together all the time.
Now, when you get into the curve of the piecing, that seems to me it sort of, you have to really pay attention to your placement of your fabric.
Yes, we're going to mark the center of each curve, and we'll pin the ends very well so that everything stays where it's supposed to stay. And these are fairly gentle curves. It's not a tight curve, so you don't have to, it's nothing to be worried about, really. Okay, so piece number 8. Oops. Okay, so the rhythm of this is cut, place, sew, press. So we just cut, we're going to place our piece. When you get real good at this, you'll probably dispense with the pins. We're going to sew. Release that paper and press. And then we're back to the cut. And we did piece number 8, so now we're on number 9. So we pressed, we'll cut. Place. Pull that paper out. For number 11. Space here, I think. Wish we were on a live thing where we could have people text in questions. That would be fun. Of course, then I'd probably start making mistakes if I was answering questions.
And you're not using steam when you press.
No, I don't want to distort my paper. This little iron doesn't have steam. See how perfect those points come out? It's because I'm sewing on the line.
Beautiful.
We are looking for 14. If this is your first time paper piecing, I mean, you don't see me peeling down to check every time. I've done enough of it so that I know where I am on this. But if this is your first time, I would suggest you continue to fold that paper back and make sure that you are covered, especially when you're working with triangles, because they can get kind of wonky. So you think you're covered and you find out you're not. So real time, we've been at this for how long, Phyllis?
About 20 minutes.
Yeah, so in about 30 minutes, we're gonna have a whole piece finished. It's pretty fast, it's pretty easy, it's pretty efficient, it's very accurate. The only thing I will say is it uses a little bit more fabric because you're not cutting your pieces, you know, exactly accurately to the size ahead of time. You're cutting them well oversized and then trimming them down.
And one thing I've noticed, don't forget to fold your paper back to cut.
Oh, that would be a big whoops. That would be a whoops.
I've done it. And then you're like, oh.
I can imagine that would be very frustrating. How did you fix that? Did you tape the...
You start over.
Oh, you started over?
I guess you could tape it.
I think I might have tried to tape it, especially, I mean, if I was at the very beginning of the piece, I might...
If you're at the very end and you want to, but you get in a rhythm and your mind gets distracted and you go...
Yeah, you sew on the line, you do not cut on the line. You must fold your paper back. I can see how you would do that. That'd be easy to do.
You go, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Don't jinx me. No colorful words in the video. Okay, so we're looking for piece 17. Oopsie. If you're doing a piece that has, let's just say you were doing
in the front yard.
Phyllis's phone is talking to her. So if you're doing a piece, a quilt maybe, that has a whole bunch of this particular piece, you could, and I have, and it's much faster, if you had 6 of these blocks, say, do the same thing to all 6 at one time. So you would trim all of these pieces for all 6 of your blocks, and then you would, oopsie, see, I can't talk and piece at the same time. I just cut the wrong side.
Distractions, see?
I know. That was not a major error, though. That was just a little oops. Okay. So anyway, if you were doing 6 or 7 or 10 or 12 blocks just like this, I would do all of these pieces and then sew all of these pieces and then iron all of those pieces. And it goes much, much faster instead of doing one at a time and then moving on to the next one. Okay, let's see, we're looking for the blue piece, this number 19. $20. We're on our last piece already. Okay, so that is all there is to block number 1. You're all finished, and in just a moment we'll reset the camera and I'll show you how to mark your 1/4 of an inch. We're also going to mark each one of these intersections so when we're sewing those curves we don't lose our points. Okay, so we've got this all finished. It's foundation paper pieced, so our points are all perfect. So before we take the paper off, we need to make a few markings. So I'm going to go along. I've got a friction pen. You can use whatever erasable marker you like. And I'm going to mark a little red dot right here at the intersection of these. That's where all of our points are. And that helps us to know right where to sew when we're piecing those curves together. Just like that. Okay. Then I'm going to take a ruler that has a fairly visible 1/4 inch mark, and I'm going to mark a 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the paper. Every 1/2 inch to an inch. And then when I'm cutting, I'm just going to cut from dot to dot. I tend to like to cut this portion with scissors just because a rotary cutter can kind of get away from me. Okay, so I've made all my marks. I'm just going to cut little red dot to little red dot. And then on the straightaways, I'm just going to use my 1/4 inch line on my ruler and cut there. Okay. Then to pull the paper off, you've already pre-folded it, so it just, and we've perforated it with our big beefy needle. So just get a hold of it any way you can and just pull it out of there. Now a little piece like that is not, I'm not going to dye over that. That's going to come out the first time it's washed. A big piece like this, yes, I'll get in there and pull that out. Okay, so in this block that we're going to make, this is going to be the piece that we're sewing through. And these two are templates. I traced them out, piece 8, pattern H and pattern O, onto freezer paper, and I'm going to iron them onto the wrong side, making sure I've got a 1/4 inch all the way around before I iron it down, and then we're going to cut it out on the line. And you will end up with a piece that's like this, and a piece that's like this. Okay, so first we're going to take our flying geese piece. We're going to fold it in half, and I've marked the center, and I fold this in half, and I'm going to mark the center there. So then I'm going to put my right sides together, Put my 2 center markers together and secure that. Go over to the side, and this straight side needs to be going straight and parallel to that one. So I'm going to pin this in a couple places so it's not wiggling around, so that it stays straight and even on that end. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this other side over here. So you have to kind of bend it around, but it will fit. Okay. Now it looks like this isn't going to fit, but it will, because we're going to pin right on that 1/4 inch mark, and the 1/4 inch mark of the white fabric is the same size as the 1/4 inch mark of the dark blue fabric. So you just have to pin right through that place. And I'm taking small little pieces of fabric there. I'm not taking a great big bite with my pen, just a small bite will do. Make sure you keep your ends together. And when we sew this, we're going to sew with the white fabric up so that we can see these red marks, and we want to stitch right directly through those red marks. Maybe a hair's width towards your seam allowance, but not any more than that. And by pinning these ends first, they stay right where they're supposed to stay. There we are. So here we are ready to sew our curve. We've got it all pinned in place. We're keeping an eye on these red marks right here. We're going to stitch just to the inside by maybe a thread's width. If you have a stiletto, feel free to use it. And I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, yes, I sew over pins, especially when it's on a curve. So I'm just keeping an eye on that 1/4 inch line that's on the bed of my machine, and these red spots, red dots. Okay, let's take all our pins out. We'll give it a quick press. We'll see how we did. Oops. Okay, so we're all sewn, and we're going to press. I'm going to have my seam allowance going towards my dark fabric here. Just give it a press. We've got a nice smooth curve. Now this is the harder curve because it's a tighter curve. This one out here is really pretty easy because it's almost even not a curve. So we're going to be sewing this piece to this up at the top.
Looks
here.
pretty good.
And it's on to the next curve. So we'll do the same thing again with the folding in half and the marking. This one's a little bit bigger curve, so I think I'm going to mark it in a couple places. So we'll mark the halfway point, and then we'll mark the halfway of the halfway point. It gives us a couple extra reference points. And just fold that one into the mark, the crease, and mark this one. And then we've marked our centerpiece by folding in half, and then in half to the center and mark there, in half to the center and marked there. And we're going to do the same thing here. Just fold our ends, mark that middle piece. Fold into the center. And into the center again. Good. And these will go right sides together. We're going to mark our middle pieces. Our quarter pieces. And then again, we're going to make sure our edges are going nice and straight. I'm going to put a pin down here to keep everything from moving around before I pin up here. And then again, this one is going to be a little easier than the smaller curve. You can see it's just, it wants to lay flat. So again, you're going to take a small piece right where that 1/4 inch seam is. You don't have to take a great big bite with your pin. You're just trying to hold your stitching area together. Okay. Put our 2 pieces together here. Our edges going straight. I did have a question the other day as to whether the binder clips would work. I don't think so, only because you have to pull them out so far in advance of when your needle gets there that things are going to shift out of place. So this is a place where I would definitely use pins over the binder clips. Okay. Again, I'm going to sew with the white on the top so that I can see these red marks that I made. Okay, so here we are. We're going to begin our stitching. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning again and the end. Okay, so again, I'm paying very close attention to my 1/4 inch right here, and I'm going to be just to the very outside of each one of these red marks. Okay, stop with your needle down every once in a while and make sure that this is still lying flat under here. There's a big piece of fabric up under there. Okay, let's take it out, remove our pins, give it a press and see how we did. Okay, so we've got all our pins out. I'm going to press this back. There we go. That is your first block all done, just as easy as that.